Hello, everyone. I'm back this week again with women moving beyond interviews. This time, have really great pleasure to interview Dr. Marlize Vivo. So she should be here anytime, anytime soon. I'm really excited because I've been waiting for this interview for a long time. Um, I love the job she's doing with pregnant women, all her research job, and also the work she's undertaking with the Active Pregnancy Foundation. And yeah, she's here now. Oh yes, yeah, it's
Hi.
working now. You're here.
Oh
Hello.
yeah. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
Trying to
Really,
settle
really
my
nice.
dog.
Say again, please.
Just trying to settle my dog who desperately wants to go outside.
Oh, well, I know it's going to be short, so it won't be long. It won't be long.
No worries.
So thank you so much for being here, for agreeing to have the interview with me. I know you're super busy. You do loads of things, so I really appreciate that at the end you found the time to meet with me online and to have the interview. So I was just saying before you came that I've been following your research job as well. I remember first time I saw one of your posters in one of the basis conference in Nottingham. Um,
That was many
so
moons ago.
yeah, it was like 4 years ago, something like that.
I
Yeah,
think so, possibly 2017-ish.
2017,
Yes.
2017. Yes, yeah. So long time ago. So many things have happened in between, and what I've been following as well, all the research you've been publishing, especially during the COVID. Which has been really good to keep knowing how pregnant women are still active and how we can keep encouraging them. So, well, thank you so much also for your research contribution. And well, I'll just let you know now to tell a little bit about yourself and about the Active Pregnancy Foundation too.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Marlize de Vivo. I think if I'm in Starbucks, I'm probably best known as Lisa. That's just much easier. I'm a senior research fellow at Canterbury Christchurch University, and then also co-founder and CEO of the Active Pregnancy Foundation. And obviously within that, there are just so many projects involved and just have my finger in so many pies. I think it's a small world, so in some way you always meet someone that you've already connected with, or you share, or you've cited, or have a share similar. Have you cited?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's the right answer. But I think it's essentially a small world, and we all seem to know who each other. We know our work and our interests, and I think it's great that we collaborate, because I think ultimately within this field, if you want to make a real difference to women's lives, you can't work in a silo, and you can't be precious about your work. You have to share and collaborate, and that's what I think essentially the Active Pregnancy Foundation is all about. We recognize now that in the UK we have national guidance. This gives us the basis to provide evidence-based information to women, and in a way that they understand. So it's a way of communicating the science, and that's our foundation. And that's what we're about. We're there to collaborate and share, and ultimately supporting women to stay and enjoy being active throughout motherhood. Because I think
Yeah.
quite often in those journeys, you tend to lose yourself, and you have the perception of having to give things up to be a better mum. But
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's that element of taking care of ourselves ultimately make us better mums.
Yeah. And that's amazing. And I love you said about collaboration because when we think about, well, when people ask me, oh, when I tell people that don't know me at all, and I told them what I do, and they say, oh, that's really interesting. Like, there's no so much about it out there. It's like, well, from my point of view, there's lots of things, but I think that's my point of view because we're inside it. But as you said, I agree a lot with you. It is a small world, still a small world, growing and and being bigger. But obviously, there's still lots of things we have to do, and lots of minds we have tried to change too.
Exactly, and I think especially in the UK, that was initially my biggest issue, because we didn't have national guidance that gave me that sort of clout to be able to do more research and to say that, well, this is the evidence, you can be more active. Without that, it took a lot of convincing, and changing societal norms takes much longer than science. And I think
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
battle.
Yeah, because in science, well, now it's like completely settled, and we have a really good foundation and really good evidence-based paper saying that you must be active if you have no contraindications. But still in society, we sadly see people saying pregnant women, "Oh, don't move, it's okay, you don't have to do anything, just stay and sit down, and it's risky if you do exercise." Like, well, no, no, it's not in that way. So this has been a quite nice introduction, and now I'm going to start asking you things because I know you're a mom. Um, so you've been a mom, you're obviously involved with pregnant women, so I think you're a great example as well to show women that they can be active, that we have to acknowledge it is hard because motherhood is hard work, but still, as you said, as you mentioned, we have to find the time to take care of ourselves. So one of my first questions is, which is your relationship with exercise, even before you were pregnant?
Yeah, I think so. I had a really sporty upbringing. I'm from South Africa, so we're passionate people and we love sports. So for myself, I did athletics and netball at a county level. I played in national championships, and I then represented South Africa in 4 world championships in international korfball. So I had a really sporty background. But then I think in my professional career, I went on to become a biokineticist, and that is a clinical exercise therapist. So even in my professional training, I knew, I think, well, we classed it as working with special populations at the time. And for me, that's something I'm very uncomfortable with. I don't think pregnant women should be seen as a special population. We are trying to normalize physical activity, so therefore they are not, really special in that way. But yes, so I had that academic and professional background, knowing what women can do. So when I became pregnant, I didn't think twice. I went ahead and did my thing. And I think in South Africa, because that's just what you do, you just get on with things. It was much more accepted. But I relocated to the UK. I was, I think, 7 months pregnant. And the first thing we did, we went to join a gym, as you do. And I actually had a lot of finger pointing at that point and people staring and commenting. And that made me start to ask certain questions. So at the time, I worked out that the UK didn't have national guidance, that healthcare professionals didn't talk about the topic at all. It wasn't brought up once in my entire maternity journey. So that made me ask questions. And 6 months after my daughter was born, I decided to do a master's degree and, correct all the wrongs and fix the world. And I was basically shot down at every opportunity saying, we will not approve a study that involves pregnant women because there's no national guidance. And that
That's international.
Well, my training was grounded in guidance from the American College of Sports Medicine. So that's where in South Africa we didn't have national guidance either, but we based our training on the ACOG and the ACSM. So yeah, that started a whole other journey, and my career then went an academic pathway. And eventually I got to do a PhD at Canterbury Christchurch University. And the whole premise is understanding and predicting why pregnant women do or don't engage in physical activities. And through that journey, I think I handed my PhD in the February, and in the June, they released the national guidance for pregnancy physical activity. So, and that basically, that changed everything. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted a slice of that pie. Yeah, and I think at the moment we are very much still riding that wave. And the inclusion of the postnatal guidance in 2019, and now having that sort of continuous journey as a woman from adulthood through pregnancy and the postnatal period back to adult physical activity guidelines. That's a huge thing. Having physical activity as part of a life course approach that's massive. And I totally embrace and support that approach. And I am so glad that, well, it's a bit late, but 2020, the World Health Organization has now also included pregnancy physical activity guidance. And I think that just gives us all that evidence-based and support, just makes it so much, it's not easy, but it's much easier to try and normalize this within communities and societies broadly.
Yes, of course, I completely agree. Because in Spain, I'm originally from Spain, and we don't have, well, we still don't have national guidance. And I remember when I started working with, well, studying about pregnancy and how we could train pregnant women, the only thing we had was the ACOG guidelines. That was kind of the only thing. And then obviously with the updates from the ACOG and then from the CSEP, that's really, really good, and the strong guidelines as well. And obviously the ones from the UK, which are quite an easy and kind of hand tool we can give, especially for healthcare providers, to explain to the women, okay, just at a glance, that's what you can do, that's what is safe. And that's why I teach midwife students first year, and I always show them, like, this is just a piece of paper, super easy to understand, what at least to give you a starting point in pregnancy.
Yes. So I view the CMO's infographics as a cheat sheet. They were never meant to be public facing. They are there for healthcare professionals to facilitate conversations. So around every one of those key messages, a conversation needs to happen with a healthcare professional. I think by themselves, particularly the postnatal guidelines, it can be quite dangerous and can be interpreted in the wrong way by many women. So I think it's very important to recognize that those are healthcare professionals' tools, and that by simply sort of printing them off and putting them up in waiting rooms, or you including them in the bounty bags, that's not good enough. We need to have those discussions, and that's what they are there for. They are tools.
Yeah, especially as you mentioned with the postnatal guidelines. I like them as a starting point, but I completely agree with you as well, because postnatal is something completely different. We have lots of different variables to take into account for the woman, and just giving that to them, it can be really, really confusing.
Yeah. I think particularly what doesn't come through very clearly within the postnatal guidelines is this graded and individualized approach. So depending on your birth experience and depending on whether you are experiencing any sort of pelvic health or abdominal wall dysfunctions or symptoms, it's very easy to say, oh, I see a big block saying 150 minutes, I must do that today. And that's not the truth. The truth is we should build back up to that 150 minutes over 12 months. But obviously having all the systems in place for referrals to take place, for self-referrals to happen, so that women can address any concerns in that time, but supporting them in returning back to that physical activity level.
Yeah, well, obviously there is a progression there, and it has to be a really thorough progression to make sure that there's not going to be any long-term injury or any other long-term physical discomfort or musculoskeletal problem. So yes, there's still job to do.
Yes, there's lots of work still to do
for all of us. So, well, going back to your maternity journey, and one of the questions, and I think you've more or less answered that already. One of the questions is whether you found any barriers to be physically active or any enablers. And I think you have kind of a little bit of both, where you went in South Africa and then when you came to the UK. So is there any other thing you would like to comment on this, about how can we tackle those barriers, especially in society?
Yeah, so like I said, when I came over the first time pregnant with my daughter, there was absolutely nothing. Nothing existed in my community. My healthcare professionals didn't want to really discuss or, embrace the topic at all. And I wasn't sure if it was simply a case because I was, coming over from a different country and so late in my pregnancy that it wasn't really discussed. But because as a professional, I trained in this field and I knew what to do, I don't think I paid much attention to that. I just went on and I did what I knew I had to do and what I could do. When I was pregnant with my son, it was a very different scenario, and having gone through sort of a master's degree at the time, I made a point of asking specific questions. And I went from the start and I was like, hang on, what do you think about this? And, you know, I was sort of, I would always say provoking questions to test what they would say. And again, I was shot down. So again, I was left to my own devices and I did my own thing, but not too bothered because I knew I was doing the right thing. I think in terms of what type of activities I engaged in was very different, because I found with my second pregnancy, there were different barriers in place. I now had a child that required childcare in order for me to go and do things. So yes, barriers change, I think, and motherhood perhaps in itself is a barrier to being active. So having not enough time, or not, you know, a support network that can give you perhaps or support you with childcare, things like that.
Yeah.
That was massively lacking towards my second pregnancy. So in that ways, they were different, and the barriers were slightly different. But I was also quite stubborn in that I wasn't going to be told you can't do something. I'm very much about changing the narrative and focusing on what can be done. I'm quite keen on adapting, but I hate giving up. It feels like failure. So in you know, changing activities, that was quite acceptable, and I knew that would have to be done. And I think looking back, I probably enjoyed much more aerobic type activities with my first pregnancy, but in my second pregnancy, I had a little one at home, so I did things like home workouts and, you know, home programs and a lot of walking with my daughter. So it changed completely in the way I approached it, but I still knew that I was going to be active. There was just no question about it. But I think the other thing that perhaps for me was very important is knowing that getting myself in the best possible place before I fell pregnant. So I think quite often that preconception period is very much overlooked. And not discussed enough to say, well, hang on, if you can get yourself, you know, into a routine, a physical activity routine, and you can put in all the support networks that you would require in your pregnancy, if you can get your BMI perhaps to an optimal place, you'd conceive better, you'd carry better, you'd recover better. So things like that are not discussed. So I think with my second pregnancy, I worked quite hard in the 3 months before conceiving. And that set me up. I think that set me up some sort of routine for the second pregnancy. So I think there needs to be some attention paid to the interpregnancy period as well, in discussing, you know, whether it's fertility or it could be. I know body weight is quite often a sensitive topic, but it could be getting to the ideal or optimal BMI to conceive and setting you up just for a better pregnancy experience.
Yeah, it's not just about the weight itself. It's not just the number, because we know, like, postpartum weight retention can lead to loads of different complications. Even if you don't have more kids, or if you get pregnant again, we know that's quite important. And what you mentioned about the 3 months before, and it's not that long period of time. It's just 3 months for you to be kind of back up, build up your fitness, and be at your best shape for the pregnancy, probably for your second postnatal period, and again to continue. And this is one of the things we've been looking at in my research in Swansea University. We were looking at, well, obviously this was retrospective, and it was self-reported, physical activity and physical exercise routines 3 months before the pregnancy. And one thing that we found, because what we're measuring cardiovascular variables, is that the stroke volume responds a lot better during pregnancy in the ones that have been more active 3 months before the pregnancy. And it's just your cardiovascular system, which is changing a lot and is doing a huge adaptation when you're pregnant.
Exactly.
It's going to respond better if you do just 3 months before you start being active and you start building up. So
yeah,
there's so many things we can do before. And I completely agree with you. This is not discussed, because normally when women get pregnant, or if you start planning your pregnancy, we don't ask any healthcare provider or any exercise professional. We just plan our pregnancy. And obviously this is not to blame anyone, it's just the way it works. Like, we just decide to get pregnant, and we probably just start taking folic acid that's kind of the overall recommendation that it's out there before pregnancy, but it's not out there a recommendation that, okay, you should be in a really good shape because you're going to put on weight and this has to happen. You're probably going to put 10, 15 kilos on and this is okay. But obviously your whole musculoskeletal structure has to be ready to support the weight.
Exactly.
and then to give birth. So yes, I completely agree that.
I mean, I use this example quite often in terms of energy requirements. You are going to be required to run a marathon, and I don't know anybody who would enter a marathon race without preparing. So why are we not preparing women? But even more so in terms of strength is why aren't we preparing mothers to be functionally strong? They are going to have a little one that increases in weight over time, and they're going to carry them and pick them up. So why are we not preparing moms to better cope with those realities?
Or why are we telling moms to not lift weights heavier than 4 kilograms? Like it just doesn't make any sense. Like when she's gonna pick her 5, 6 years old kid up, like it's gonna weigh 12 kilos, 15 kilos, and if you just tell her, oh no, in the pregnancy, don't worry, just wait 4 kilos, no more than that, like
exactly.
We still need to change.
I think it's very much also in terms of language. So we now have the basics in terms of it's this 150 minutes. It seems like, that's the golden ticket, and these 2 days of strength training exercises. But what does that actually mean? And I think there's still a lot of work that we can do in terms of communicating those messages more effectively.
Like how?
Exactly. Yeah, what that actually means. And I don't want us to be in a situation where anyone counts minutes. I think that's ridiculous. No one should be able, no one should keep track of this 150 minutes, but we should definitely encourage moms to move more and move more often. And I quite often, and I'm being from South Africa, perhaps that's just the thing I do, but I look at nature and how, animals in nature, how they cope with being pregnant and how they just get on with things. And I'm not saying that's for everybody, but if you are active and that's the thing you do, you should be able to maintain that throughout pregnancy.
Yeah, it's just, and we normally talk about overall population because we know that there are specific cases that they're going to need, like, obviously specific advice and probably the discussion whether it's beneficial or not for you to be active. But in general, most of the pregnancies are low risk. So, and the question shouldn't be there. It's like you must be active if you're having a low risk pregnancy. And even if you have a high risk pregnancy, there's still things we can adapt. There's always room for adaptation, always. And I love what you said. I try to compare as well with animals in nature, and especially when I try to explain students about birth, more than the pregnancy process, but also focusing on birth. And I remember one slide, but this was ages ago. I was invited to teach a course about exercise during pregnancy, and one of the slides one of my colleagues put up was to female, I don't know if you say female lion in English, I just don't know.
A lioness.
A lioness, okay, thank you. I've never said this in English. So there was kind of a discussion between two lions, like, oh, we're pregnant, should we go hunting or not? I think I feel tired. It's like there's not that question. There's not that question. So what is that the same in human beings? And I think that comes a lot from society, of course, and just trying to protect women and being like, okay, we really have to protect you from anything that can harm pregnancy or that can harm the baby. And right now we know that being sedentary can harm the baby more than being active. So
exactly. And a whole new world, I think, has opened up with epigenetics and our understanding now of epigenetic influences and children being born at a health disadvantage because their moms weren't active enough. And that's something that is a huge societal issue. So why would we want that? And there's a lot more discussion that needs to happen around that. So I think the question really is, why can't I be active? And we shouldn't ever go to a professional and say, can I do this? Can I do this? It's like, why can't I continue to be active? And that's a discussion to have.
Yeah, and it's funny because, well, you do research as well, and you might have faced this kind of concern. Like, if you work with an intervention and a control group in a research project, normally the intervention is having any exercise intervention or nutrition intervention, and the control doesn't do anything. So the concern sometimes is like, you cannot tell the control group not to be active because this would be unethical.
Yeah.
It's like, well, in research, we have really clear that if one of the groups is having a benefit, you cannot kind of take that away from the other group. Why is not that way when we talk to like outside of research? Why it's not in that way? And yeah, it should be the same. Like it should be considered unethical not to discuss with pregnant women all the possibilities that they have to have a better pregnancy.
Yes.
And exercise is one of that. And I get that maybe healthcare providers don't feel they have the knowledge or the expertise to talk about exercise, but they don't need to have that. They just have to start the conversation and then kind of signpost or refer to an exercise professional.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the Active Pregnancy Foundation is very keen on. It's whenever you have contact with professionals, is for little seeds to be planted, and for those, those seeds grow over time. So depending on whether I see my GP or my midwife or my coach or my fitness trainer or the receptionist at the leisure center, these messages should all line up. Because I think with pregnancy, as soon as somebody says one thing negative and one thing that gives you just a little bit doubt, the default position is to stay back and do nothing because we assume it's safe. It's really important to have a consistent message and a whole systems approach when it comes to physical activity advice. And I get it's all new. It's 2017, 2019. The guidance is very new. So there's a lot that we still have to do in terms of upskilling already qualified healthcare professionals and embedding this within the curriculum of new healthcare professionals. And even in terms of fitness professionals, the professional standards in the UK still only has the 2017 pregnancy guidelines in there. So they don't have the postnatal guidelines in there, and which means that if we qualify a fitness instructor today, they may not provide you with the same advice as, for example, your midwife. And that is still a problem, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, it should be balanced, of course. And also, well, because I don't know if in the UK it's the same, because you need a specific level to train with pregnant and postnatal women, but I don't know what type of training you get just from kind of the basic level, because I know there's then loads of training outside of that, like for example all the barbell education, which is amazing, and well, she's great. She's just great with everything that she's doing for women in general, not only for pregnant and postnatal women, but that's apart from the basic the basic training.
So in the UK, there's you start basically almost at a level 2, and that's a general exercise instructor. Level 3 personal trainer, and then a specialized level 3 qualification in pre and postnatal exercise. And this pre and postnatal qualification is quite often a weekend course with some coursework to do. So I think we can still improve that an awful lot more.
Yeah, especially because you come from a basis, so you know about exercise, you know about how to prescribe exercise and how to program training, but all the physiological aspects from the pregnancy, they have to be really well understood as well, and also in the postnatal period. So weekend course just covering pregnancy and postnatal is not enough. I think it can be a good starting point, but obviously and
I think even more importantly is making sure that all the courses from level 2 has some of this content already there. So it's not necessary, for perhaps an exercise instructor with a level 2 to be able to train a pregnant woman, but to know when to refer and where to signpost, and not to simply turn people away, because that's what happens quite often is lots, because people don't feel confident in their knowledge, they turn women away, and we don't want that situation. We want women to be part of the system and engage throughout their motherhood journeys.
Yes, of course, completely agree. Yeah. So I forgot my watch, so I don't know what time is it actually. I don't know if we've run
just after 2 minutes past 2.
Okay. So we've been like more or less 30 minutes. So I won't keep you long. So there's because I think we've covering. I mean, I don't know. I know I haven't gone too much into your maternity journey, but I'm quite happy with all the things you said and the conversation that we had. I hope it's going to get somewhere. And there's three questions I always ask when we finish the interview. And one is there anything you would have liked to know about exercise during pregnancy and in the postnatal period when you were going through those phases?
So for me, I'm looking back, and it's shocking. I had no postnatal care. In terms of, I had a 6-week postnatal check with a GP, and he was mainly concerned about my baby. Asked me if I was breastfeeding and what my method of contraception will be going forward, and that was it. Nothing else. And I know with the new NICE guidelines, that has changed in that they have to now ask, are you physically and mentally okay? And that's a great step in the right direction. But I think what I want to see is more. There needs to be more.
More support.
If you look in terms of your maternity journey and the number of appointments you get as a woman in that journey compared to the number of appointments you have as a postnatal woman, it is shocking, and it doesn't compare. And something
you're completely left behind.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that I wish I had, is better postnatal care, and again having those discussions around the interpregnancy period and family planning over the long term, and not just sort of immediately, are you on the pill? What pill do you want? Are you that type of thing? That's good and right that happens, but there's so much more to that conversation. I think another thing for me is backing yourself. I think you lose a lot of confidence perhaps in pregnancy, because you don't know everything, and every pregnancy is different. So even though you've had 2 or 3 children, something happens, and then you just you lose a bit of I think personally I lost my mojo, and I felt like I was making decisions not for me but for someone else. And it took me a very long time, I think, to step away from things and realize that to make better decisions for other people, I really need to take care of myself. So I think also that idea of activity being a very important element of self-care, and that self-care is not selfish. So I think if someone could just give that bit of reassurance in your pregnancy and postnatal journey, that would have been really welcomed. So, and I think the final thing is just coming back to the idea of backing yourself and listening to your body. And if you feel something is not quite right, or if it feels really good, is to believe in yourself and to trust your body. And I think in pregnancy, you doubt yourself even more. So it's to really listen and to get in tune with what you are feeling and experiencing. And I know it's easier said than done, but having been there, I can say that I wish I trusted myself more on certain things. And I didn't listen as much to, in-laws and, friends, and everybody wants a piece, wants to say something. They've all got something valuable to contribute, but trusting myself and backing yourself, specifically when it comes to physical activity. And if you know it's good and it feels right, to have the conviction to say, I know it's good for me and I know it's good for my baby.
Yeah, I'm not going to be convinced from the opposite, but I guess it's hard if you have, because, I guess, you said, like, when your partner moved to the UK, first thing you did was signing up for a gym. So having the support from your partner and from your peer group is really good, but not all women have that. So I understand that, like, even if you want to be active and you feel it's the right thing to do, if you don't have that peer support, if you still, in the opposite, you have the peer pressure, it's quite hard. So.
Yeah. And again, we recognize that. So with the Active Pregnancy Foundation, we've set up different communities, a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, Strava group communities. So if you are in that space and you're not, you feel you should be doing it, but perhaps you're not entirely convinced, you need to convince other people, then I would encourage all women to join those groups, to look at the information, the evidence-based information. We've also set up a section for the support network. So how can your partner support you better? What to say in certain situations. So I would also say direct them there and have these discussions. These are important discussions to have. I had a discussion or a meeting yesterday with a group of healthcare professionals in Lancashire, and I think what is really important is to see how physical activity is a means to an end. So if we look, for example, at the birth transformation plan in the UK, we have those 9 streams. Not any of them is named physical activity, but physical activity could probably fit in all of them. So physical activity is a means to achieving other things. And I think as soon as we can start convincing people that exercise and physical activity is not a tick box, it is a means to get to another tick box. So we can achieve better maternal mental health through physical activity, and then we tick that box. We can engage through, more women through digital technologies. So then we tick that box. So I think it's convincing people that physical activity is really part of something else. It's a spoke in a wheel, and not to see it as that one thing that happens.
It should be a lifestyle, not
Exactly.
just for a little period of time. And well, I will go with the last question. Like, anything you would like to say? I know you said lots to encourage women to be active, but anything you would like to say, kind of in one sentence, to encourage women to stay active in motherhood before, during, and after pregnancy?
I would come back to that idea of backing yourself, trusting yourself, listening to your body, and really also doing your homework. Not just relying on what other people say, but having a good read and asking questions. And I think the Active Pregnancy Foundation is a really good place to ask the questions. So I would perhaps send them there in the first instance, and build your support network from there.
Yeah, and it's a great, I don't want to say a great tool, but a really good place to go. You have your website, you are in social media, so it's quite handy to find the organization.
We're trying to plug a gap, because we know that there's not this one centralized place to send women, that women would still go out there and type something in Google. But if we have a centralized place that is where the foundation is evidence, then we create, more trust and reassurance amongst this community. But we're also giving them a space to ask questions. If you feel it's silly or you're not quite sure, just ask it, because somebody else is probably also thinking it as well.
And it is better to have the reassurance. Like, if I have a question, I ask, and I know I'm not going to be judged. No one is going to tell, oh, you should be doing that. You should know this already. Like, obviously it's not that type of place, and I agree with you. I hope it keeps growing and growing and growing, and at least in the UK it will be like central point also, well, for women and for healthcare providers to keep up to date, to know what is safe to do, to know all the really wide spectrum we have to train during and after pregnancy. So, well, thank you so much. Is there any other thing you would like to say or to comment on or discuss?
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being. I know you're super busy, and I know your dog is waiting for you. So I won't take that much time. Thank you so much, Marlize. Hope everything goes really, really, really well with the foundation. I will keep following you because I love the job you do as a researcher and also in the foundation. So, well, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your rest of your day, and well, we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.